And already almost 7 days on the calendar, a lifetime to those left in its wake. Myanmar struggles to survive after Cyclone Nargis. International aid agencies struggle with Myanmar's military government to provide help. The generals in charge have allowed some international assistance into the isolated country, but many offers of help have been put on hold. The United Nations, which offered immediate aid, is now blasting Myanmar's generals, saying they dithered as their people died. The government says 22,000 people perished. A U.S. official predicts a death toll as high as 100,000. Now, hours after Nargis brought unspeakable misery to Myanmar, our Dan Rivers made his way into the storm-battered country, and he was one of just a few reporters reporting from the scene of devastation. Dan has now made his way back to Bangkok, where communications are much better, and he continues our coverage from there. Dan.
Well, Christy, I've just come back from the Laputa area of the Irrawaddy Delta, which is one of the hardest hit by Cyclone Nargis, where tens of thousands of people are said to have died, where many people who've survived are without food, where the scenes really beg a belief. You may find some of these images disturbing. We're deep in the Irrawaddy Delta, making our way down the Laputa River. The banks are punctuated with destroyed homes, apparently abandoned after Cyclone Nargis hit. It's been very, very difficult to get into this river delta. The roads are not passable for us, so now this is the only way we can progress any further by boat. And the river that we're travelling on is incredibly swollen. You can see all the trees along the side here are completely submerged by river water. Normally, these would all be on dry land. Myanmar government has refused to let any international press into this area officially, but we've managed to get through numerous checkpoints to see for ourselves how bad things are. This 79-year-old man tells me he's lost his sister, his granddaughter, 2 grandsons, and his daughter-in-law. His voice is cracking with emotion as he explains how he found their bodies amid the debris of their village. A broken man, he's gathered with other survivors who've received no help whatsoever. We're trying to get further into the delta to reach other survivors, but shortly after this video is shot, we were stopped and questioned by the police, who said we couldn't go any further. It feels as if this government is trying to stop the world from seeing what's happening here. Perhaps wire service photos like these are the sorts of images they want to suppress, the macabre, contorted bodies that litter this landscape. We also managed to take some disturbing images of our own in a local hospital. Conditions are appalling, injuries horrendous. Many have suffered lacerations to the back as they clung to palm trees and were pummeled by the debris-laden storm surge. There are only the most basic facilities and, again, no evidence of any aid. We have to leave this area before we're arrested. The people we say goodbye to are without help, have little food, and are profoundly traumatized. Stranded in the Irrawaddy Delta, living in fear of this military regime that seems determined to hush up the scale of this tragedy. Some really awful scenes down there, Christy, and it's incredibly difficult to get down there. Just to get to that area, not only there's a boat trip, but there's an 8-hour drive down dirt tracks from Yangon. That just gives you an idea of how difficult it is to get aid to where it's needed.
Well, if it could even get into the country. Now, Dan, give us your personal reaction to the devastation you saw up close, firsthand, inside Myanmar.
Well, it's just appalling. I mean, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are basically surviving in the ruins of their homes. They've got pretty much nothing left. The floodwaters are very, very high still. It's still a really saturated landscape with trees almost completely submerged in some places. And there's very little high ground for them to go to. This is a very low-lying, flat area of land. So these people are totally helpless. They have no cars, no vehicles, no way of getting out. No one seems to be going in to rescue them. There's no food coming in. The food that they grew in their fields has been damaged and is inedible. So there's very little that they can do themselves to survive, apart from sit there and wait.
And at the moment, that wait is dragging on and on and on.
So then how close are communities there to a second wave of death by disease or hunger?
Well, I'd imagine that's already happening. I mean, the US ambassador here, Eric John, has said every day that they're being delayed. Not getting a visa is costing lives. And what, we're 6 days now since this cyclone hit. There are still dozens of NGOs sitting here in Bangkok unable to get in. It's very difficult for journalists like us to get in and report the story, to get the pictures out. The authorities have made it abundantly clear they don't want us there for whatever reason. So it's incredibly frustrating and difficult for everyone involved who are trying to help, let alone the people who are sitting there. Not only have they lost everything, they've lost all their loved ones, but no one appears to be coming to their rescue.
And I wanted to hear more about your personal experiences as a reporter in there. International reporters are technically not allowed in the country. You've been there reporting in the last week. What did you encounter during that week as a reporter?
Well, the whole week really was spent not only trying to get to the places where the story was, and not only trying to do the job, but also trying to avoid getting arrested. I mean, the authorities seem to be investing an awful lot of time and effort in trying to catch people like me, rather than helping the people who are out there starving and in a hopeless situation. We found that my photo being distributed even, they'd gone to that length to try and catch me rather than getting on with it. So a very frustrating effort for all of those trying to get aid in and help. My colleague Sarah Seidner has been looking at how successful those efforts have been so far.
It's nearly a week since Cyclone Nagris left its devastating imprint on Myanmar, and still, the country's ruling junta is not allowing in the vast majority of international aid. The U.S. expected American planes carrying aid would be let in, but so far, it has not. The military says it is ready to make a move.
Well, at this point, we're looking at a number of options. We have the capability to fly equipment in. We have the capability to airdrop some equipment. But again, we're waiting on the request from the government of Burma.
It turns out the U.S. military already has 11,000 troops in Thailand here for a completely different mission. But if the Myanmar government finally says yes to U.S. aid, they are ready to change plans immediately. Their operations are based in Korat, Thailand. They have the resources to set up quick distribution of aid, personnel, and communications in cyclone-torn Myanmar. But a U.S. military general says they will not deploy unless they get the green light from the Myanmar government.
We're outraged by the slowness of the response of the government of Burma to welcome and accept assistance. It's clear that the government's ability to deal with the situation, which is catastrophic, is limited. And a government has responsibility to protect its own people, to provide for its people. And since it's not able to, you would expect a government to welcome assistance from others. And we're shocked by the behavior of the government.
Meantime, aid workers are also stuck in Thailand. The Myanmar embassy is closed, so no new visas are being issued at least until Monday. There are, however, some supplies that have already made it into Myanmar. Several plane loads of supplies, and a few aid workers are on the ground. The International Rescue Committee was able to get one member of their team in, but Gordon Bacon can only bring what he can carry, hoping to convince the Myanmar government in person to allow more aid workers in.
You can't do anything for the people who've died, but the priority's got to be for the living, and sadly, and unless something's done quickly, the casualty figures could rise dramatically.
Aid workers say much more help is needed to save increasingly desperate people of Myanmar. Time is of the utmost importance, as disease can easily take hold now, causing another disaster. Sarah Seidner, CNN, Bangkok.
Well, we're getting news in also of a development involving two World Food Programme planes who had their cargo offloaded in Yangon, and then the cargo was seized by the authorities. Let's get more on that now with the Regional Director, Tony Banbury. Thanks a lot for joining us, Tony. What's happened?
We finally got two planes filled with high-energy biscuits in today. Those are the first two big World Food Programme planes that have landed